Last year, I went to Indianapolis for this 2-day leadership development retreat. And while I was there, I decided to go for a little walk outside and go into the woods, kind of out behind the facility. And at one point, I came to this small clearing, and there was this big cross and this big place to have a fire, and these benches that were built in a big circle around the fire and the cross. And I saw this, and I immediately flashed back to 9th grade church camp. Because in 9th grade church camp, they had a place exactly like that, with the fire and the circle of benches and the big cross. And this touched me so much. It moved me. It caught me off guard. I just kind of sat on one of the benches underneath the cross, and all these memories and emotions just kind of came flooding back. Memories of how close I felt to God during that time of my life. How good it felt as a teenager to be in such a spiritually charged environment. Then I began to remember some of my friendships from high school. And yes, I remembered some of my enemies from high school too. It's always interesting when the guy that wanted to beat you up and stuff you in the locker wants to be your friend on Facebook 20 years later. But I remember all these people, all these relationships. As I continued to reflect, I even began to kind of move forward and process and remember friends from my 20s and my 30s. And I remembered people who it just seemed like they were always there for me. And others who seemed more like they were out to get me. I thought about the good relationships and the bad relationships. And after sitting there for a while, I kind of looked up at the cross and I wondered, what is the one common denominator in all of my bad relationships? And I processed this for a moment. And do you know what I discovered? The one common denominator in all of my bad relationships was me. Have you ever thought about that? What's the one common denominator in all of your bad relationships? You are. Now, I couldn't help but notice, none of you wrote that down. None of you note takers said, that's brilliant, must write that down. It seems obvious in our current context, doesn't it? It seems obvious, and yet it's very easy to miss. Not only is it easy to miss, it's also our first step towards the cure. There'll be 3 A's throughout this series, and today we get the first one. Admit I need help. How many of you would raise your hand and say, easier said than done? Right? But the first thing we need to do is recognize and humbly admit that I need help. And this is the point where we have to allow ourselves to be vulnerable. We have to allow ourselves to be introspective. We need to spend some time, kind of like I did, just kind of reflecting over our place in life. And this isn't easy. In fact, it's probably one of the more challenging steps in this whole process. When it comes to admitting we need help, sometimes we need help. We need help when it comes to admitting we need help. In fact, sometimes we need those brutally honest but true friends who will come alongside us and wrap their arms around us and lovingly say, hey, you've been married 9 times? Maybe it's you. Been fired from your job 5 times? Maybe it's you. 5th relationship in a row to end in a restraining order? Maybe it's you. Everything else in life is changing except You're the one common denominator. And I know it seems so obvious, and yet it can be so easy to miss the fact that we can be our own worst enemy. How many of us could say, I have gotten in my own way more times than I can count? How many of you have prayed, God, please save me from me? As human beings, we have this uncanny ability to cause ourselves more problems than our worst enemies ever could. We just have this ability to get in our own way. So let me lovingly encourage you, don't be your own roadblock to healing. Don't be the barrier to your own healing. We all have to come to the point in our life where we let down our guard, we look ourselves in the mirror, and we come face to face with what we see and we receive it. In other words, we stop dwelling in denial and we recognize reality. Now, let me just pause there for a moment and repeat, I know this is tough. That's why we call it a reality check. And the reality is painful for a lot of people. When I stop and look around at my life and I see where I am and then I see where I want to be and then I begin to process everything that's going to have to change for me to get from here to there, it's kind of scary, isn't it? After all, it involves change, and nobody likes change. But if I ever want things to get better, if I ever want things to improve, I have to stop dwelling in denial and start to recognize reality. And the reality is, I need help. And that's just being honest with ourselves about ourselves. So the good news is your hurts, habits, and hang-ups can find healing. The bad news is healing requires humility. If you want healing, if I want healing, we have to humble ourselves, swallow our pride, look in the mirror, and confess, I need help. Now, there's a verse in the Bible that you have probably read countless times, but it's possible that you never connected this verse to this idea of humility that we're talking about. That verse is Matthew chapter 5 and verse 3, and it says, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. You say, well, what exactly does it mean to be poor in spirit? Well, first let me tell you what it does not mean. The author of this text is not talking about physical poverty. There is absolutely no blessing in being poor physically or financially. He's not talking about physical poverty. He is, however, talking about how every single person needs to eventually come to a place in their lives where they recognize their own spiritual bankruptcy. They recognize their own sinfulness. They recognize their own brokenness and their inability to fix themselves. We all need to admit, I need help. I cannot do it alone. Now, another translation of this very same verse puts it this way. It says, Blessed are those who recognize that they are spiritually helpless. That's exactly what we're talking about. Spiritually helpless, spiritually bankrupt, to be poor in spirit means that I admit I need help. And God promises that if I develop that attitude of humility, if I admit that I need God's help, then I will be blessed. Blessed are the poor in spirit. So if you're looking for the first step, that's it. We need to be poor in spirit. We need to look in the mirror and acknowledge I need help. Now, there are some roadblocks and wrong turns that come our way as we begin this journey. And one of them, the very first roadblock, is fear. In fact, we all share this fear of being found out, this fear of being discovered. And I just want you to know you are not alone. The fact is, we are all in the same boat. Listen to David in Psalm 32, and I want you to hear the pain and the anguish he's in because he's been hiding his sins. Here's what he said. When I refused to confess my sins, I was weak and miserable, and I groaned all day long. When do you normally groan? You groan when the pain is so great, words are not adequate to express the agony that you are feeling. So you just groan. He says, I was weak and miserable. I groaned all day long. My strength evaporated like water in the summer heat. And that's how it all ended. He was just miserable for the rest of his life and died a miserable death. Wait, there's more. Here's the pivot. Finally, I confessed my sins to you, and I stopped trying to hide them all, and you forgave me, and my guilt was gone. See, David tried to hide his guilt, his sin, out of fear. But here's what we need to know about fear. Fear breeds weakness. We think, but I don't want anybody to know. But the more you let fear lead, the more weakness it will breed. The more you let fear dictate your actions, the less likely you are to meet success in this life. So let me ask you this. How many of you would say, when I come to the end of my days, I want to be able to reflect back on the totality of my existence and be able to shout at the top of my lungs, I was a successful failure. I was successful at failing in life. Not one hand. Nobody sets failure as a goal, right? We don't plan to fail. We just don't plan not to. Proverbs 28:13 says, you will never succeed in life. Oh, that's not the end of the verse. Hang on. You will never succeed in life if you try to hide your sins. Confess them and give them up. Then God will show you mercy. You notice how some of these verses set up what could be a tragedy in the first half, and they give you the great earth-shattering good news in the second half of the verse? Now, some of you may remember the 70s. An even fewer number of you may remember a book that was published in the 70s, and the name of that book is I'm Okay, You're Okay. Does anybody remember that book? I'm okay, you're okay. I want you to know that there's a word for this kind of thinking. It's a deep theological term that comes from crossing the word crocodile and abalone, and it's a crockabalone. The truth is, I'm not okay, and you're not okay, and that's okay because God makes us okay. See, that's what Jesus came to do. Jesus came to erase all that stuff that even you don't like about you. So no, you're not okay, and I'm not okay, but that's okay because God's grace makes us okay. Now, what's not okay is our refusal to admit we're not okay. Okay? Okay. We need each other's grace. Now, I have several clergy friends, and I'm always hearing from my clergy friends about all these different places that they discover these deep spiritual truths. You know, some of them are on an airplane when something just divine seems to hit them. Some of them are hiking in the mountains of some foreign land and some divine revelation comes to them. And you know, it's always someplace amazing and exquisite. But me, well, I was cleaning out the fridge the other day. I was cleaning out the fridge and I discovered, truthfully, a very deep spiritual truth. Here it is. Are you ready? Your stuff doesn't have to stink for it to be rotten. Your stuff does not have to stink in order for it to be rotten. Deep, right? Not really. In other words, some vegetables, when they get rotten, you know right away, don't you? Ever smell a rotten potato? That stinks. A potato, when it's rotten on the inside, will let you know. But an avocado, on the other hand, it can be rotten on the inside and look fantastic on the outside. It doesn't even stink. But they are both equally as rotten. Now, here's why I tell you that. Some people think, I don't need help because my rottenness doesn't stink. We think, oh, just the smelly people need help. The truth is, just because your rottenness doesn't stink doesn't mean you're not rotten. And when we're honest with ourselves, we recognize that there's stuff in me that I don't like. I'm not even talking about the stuff that God doesn't like. I'm talking about the stuff that's in you that even you don't like about you. You wish you could change. You always do this, and you wish you would never do this. You wish you could be more loving, more caring, more unselfish. You wish you didn't have that temper that flares up so often. You wish you didn't have that compulsion or that fear. You wish you didn't feel so insecure all the time. This is what I want you to hear. Regardless of what you may look like on the outside, we are all broken. We are all broken. Don't let our Sunday fancy clothes fool you. We are all broken. No one is more broken than you, and you're not more broken than anyone else. We are all broken together. And it's because of our mutual brokenness that every now and then we take a wrong turn. And one of the wrong turns that we take is we try to fix ourselves. Now, there's a lot of DIY shows on TV. There's a lot of DIY projects that you can do. In fact, if you want to make your next dining room table out of a tree in your backyard, I'm sure you can do it. There are a lot of great do-it-yourself projects, but you do not want yourself to be a do-it-yourself project. Jeremiah emphasizes this when he's sharing the words of the Lord in Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 13. He says, "My people have committed two sins. One, they have forsaken me, the Spirit, or the spring of living water." God says, I'm the one who has all the answers. I'm the one who can help you and heal you, and you've forsaken me. Then he goes on, they have dug their own broken wells, their own broken cisterns that can't hold water. So God says, I have the perfect plan. And yet we make up our own plan, and we try to fix ourselves, and it doesn't hold water. You do not want yourself to be a do-it-yourself project. And over the 20-some years I've been in ministry, I have been absolutely shocked and amazed at some of the things, some of the crazy things that people will do in an attempt to fix themselves. They will do all kinds of crazy things first before they even think about giving God a chance to heal their brokenness. People will believe the wackiest, craziest ideas. They'll try anything and everything else first, then maybe, just maybe, they'll give God a chance. We build our own wells, and the wells are cracked and won't hold water. We fail at fixing ourselves. And one of the biggest reasons that we fail at fixing ourselves is that so often we are trying to fix the spiritual with the physical. And no matter how hard you try, you cannot solve a spiritual problem with a physical substance. You cannot solve spiritual brokenness with a physical substance, whether it's a pill or a drug or television or alcohol or pornography or any other thing. It isn't going to ultimately relieve your pain. You cannot solve a spiritual problem with a physical substance. So the first thing I have to do, if I'm going to be poor in spirit and take that first step towards healing, the first thing I have to do is stand in front of the mirror and admit to God and myself, I need help. Now you'll notice it says that there are 3 A's. Today you got the first one. Admit I need help. Now, there are 2 more. Do you know what they are? They are something I will share with you when you come back next week. Now, I do hope that while we kind of isolated one specific subject, that was intentional, because this is what I want you to focus on this week. And again, I recognize this is not easy. I recognize this can be a challenge. That's why we have a whole week to work on it. And I want you to know that I'm working on it too. I'm just as broken as you are, and I also find it hard at times to admit that I need help. So we'll do this together. We'll come back next week and we'll figure out together what the second A is. Does that sound good?